Hey everyone, this is Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about why have you been so damn distracted? Why are you paying attention to drama that the mainstream wants you to pay attention to? But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com where you can get our latest content. Yes, I still need to update the website. I promise I'll get to it today. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter, our email newsletter that I send out every weekend, and you can get the updates right to your inbox. All right, so the topic of today is 7 stories. That's right, I found 7 important stories all developing within the last few days that I think are probably more important than focusing on the latest drama that the mainstream and the corporate media are putting in front of you and using to divide the people. And you guys know what I'm talking about. The Indigenous Peoples Day March, the March for Life, and the MAGA hat kid, and all that stuff. We'll leave that aside for the moment, but I'm going to get to the stuff that I think is more important. So let's start with this one. This is coming from the Electronic Privacy Information Center. Federal court rules police may not compel passenger ID during traffic stop. The Ninth Circuit, which is in Arizona, and I think it applies for, I don't think this is a federal for all the United, well, it's a federal court, but I don't know that it applies for all the United States or just that district, has ruled that police violated the Fourth Amendment when they asked a passenger to provide ID. The court found that, quote, a demand for a passenger's identification is not part of the mission of a traffic stop. As the court explained, the identity of a passenger will ordinarily have no relation to a driver's safe operation of a vehicle. And the Electronic Privacy Information Center had filed a friend of the court brief trying to help out the person here. And I looked up the court records, and it basically says in February 2016, police pulled over Clinton Baker for driving 11 miles over the speed limit. Oh my God, somebody put this man in prison. And they began to question his friends who were also in the car, and basically, things escalated. So the court has ruled that the cops do not have a right, absent reasonable suspicion that the person has committed a criminal offense, to ask for ID from passengers in a vehicle. So just remember that next time you're out there. That seems like a positive story, something that, people who want to be educated and know their rights might need to know. Number 2, this is coming from the American Civil Liberties Union. The FBI cannot confirm nor deny that it monitors your social media posts. And recently, the American Civil Liberties Union has filed open records requests, Freedom of Information Act requests with 6 different federal agencies, trying to find out what they're doing as far as monitoring social media. We know that they have programs that look at your Facebook, Twitter, etc., but we don't know where that data is going and how it's being used. So the request, which was filed in May of last year, has not been responded to by any of these agencies. So the ACLU has now sued all these agencies in order to get more information on this. What we do know is that, of course, the FBI, for example, has sought to create an application that would enable it to, quote, instantly search and monitor information on social media platforms. It completed detailed documentation stating that it intended to contract with Dataminr, a data analytics and machine learning vendor, who ACLU previously called out for sharing data with federal fusion centers to obtain the mission-critical social media monitoring needed by the FBI. So basically, Penlink, Dataminr, some of these companies out there that you never heard of are out there mining your data and then selling it to the government agencies like this, and they're being very secretive about it. But now they're being sued, and you can find out the details of this lawsuit right here. All of these links will be in the description below. Number 3, court rules ag-gag law criminalizes undercover reporting and violates the First Amendment. In a win for freedom of the press, a federal court this month struck down an Iowa law that made it a crime to lie about your intentions when accessing an agricultural production facility. This might seem weird to some of you guys, but this is interesting because it's a win for freedom of speech, as they say, and freedom of the press. So these laws are known as ag-gag laws, and they're aimed at undercover journalists and activists who seek to go undercover and get hired at industrial factory farms and places like that, and then show what's actually taking place behind the scenes. So in a lawsuit brought by the ACLU of Iowa, the court rightly found that this ag-gag law of Iowa violates the First Amendment. This welcome ruling joins a host of other court decisions finding similar laws in other states to be unconstitutional, and for good reason. Undercover reporting is a critical tool to inform the public about corporate wrongdoing. Overbroad laws criminalizing false speech violate the First Amendment and prevent investigative journalism from holding powerful private actors to account. So Iowa was only one of several states who passed laws like this, criminalizing various activities essential to undercover investigations, aiming to expose animal cruelty and other illegal and unsafe activities. I think this is probably a win for the animals, for the animal rights activists, for those who want to be informed about what's going on with their food and to the animals themselves, and for the press and for private investigators and journalists. So you won't hear about that, or I don't think I've heard about that reported anywhere in the mainstream, but it's probably needs a little bit of your time, and maybe you could share that one out there and let some people know what good news is out there and let them know their rights. Number 4. This is coming from The Hill this week. Rosenstein DOJ exploring ways to more easily spy on journalists. And this is an opinion piece going over how the Department of Justice has quietly been working on a revision to its guidelines governing how, when, and why prosecutors can obtain the records of journalists, particularly in leak cases. The work has been supervised by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein's office, but is not wrapped up. This effort has the potential to touch off a First Amendment debate within a press corps that has high degrees of distrust and dysfunction within the Trump administration. So this goes into more on that, and of course the ACLU commented on it, saying the Justice Department shouldn't be snooping on journalists. I advise you to read both of those to get more background. And just an FYI, I actually wrote about something similar to this back in September 2018, showing that declassified documents have already exposed that the Department of Justice is using the rules for the FOIA courts the FISA courts, to secretly spy on journalists. So they're using a secret court operated by secret judges to issue secret orders to spy on journalists secretly, and it's all legal according to them. And this is what people should be looking at when they're talking about the deep state, things like the FISA courts and other institutions that are hidden behind closed doors. So DOJ is trying to craft new rules to spy on journalists, but privately, secretly, with the FISA courts, they're already doing it. Number 5, the Yellow Vest movement has officially gone global. This one's coming from Zero Hedge via the Anti-Media. The Yellow Vest anti-government movement started in France on November 17th when over 300,000 people across France protested a carbon tax on fuel that French President Emmanuel Macron touted as evidence of France's leadership when it comes to mitigating climate change. Of course, I do want to say that it's not just about the carbon tax, and I don't think it ever was, but it's definitely not at this point. There's all kinds of views, all kinds of people coming together, and it truly does. It's not just like a right-wing thing being hijacked, or at least that's not what I've seen from people reporting on the ground. And it's not just a left-wing thing. It does seem that people are just sick of it. And this has inspired actions in Belgium where there are other people putting on yellow vests, and people are now out there, have been fighting with riot cops, dealing with those riot cops after weeks and weeks of blocking oil depot and throwing hard objects at them. So this is spreading to Brussels, and apparently there are protests now in Bulgaria, on Canada, Croatia, nothing in the U.S. that I have seen, Egypt, Finland, Germany, Iraq. So this is interesting. Now, is this a truly organic movement? We'll have to wait to see. Ireland, Israel, Italy, Netherlands, Pakistan, Poland, Portugal, and some of these are just single pictures. Russia, so this could just be like one group of people, right? But it's showing that the idea is spreading. Serbia, Taiwan, Tunisia, UK, and conspicuously absent from the list, the United States. But I do know friends who are trying to get a yellow vest movement started here. But what I was going to say about being organic, if you don't know or have never heard of color revolutions, look into the idea of color revolutions and how various power players, the deep state, people behind the scenes, billionaires, the parasite class, they use their money and their funds to go foment revolutions within countries and to make it appear organic. And sometimes, we've heard about these, the different names, the pink revolution, the diamond revolution. They give them different names, and they've happened throughout Eastern Europe and even in Central and South America in the past. So those are faux revolutions, and we want to make sure that whatever this is, if it does continue to grow, that it stays people-powered and people-centered and ultimately decentralized, because we're not all going to want the same thing, and that's what's important to remember. We don't need one new one-size-fits-all solution for something like Yellow Vest movement to be effective. We need to be diverse and decentralized. Number 6, I think. This one is not so good. This is coming from the Mind Unleashed. Below 1%, the monarch butterfly is approaching total and irreversible extinction. Now, again, this seems like something you might need to know, given that if the bees and the butterflies die, we're probably all dead. The monarch butterfly, the majestic black and orange pollinator that once covered winter trees like leaves from the Baja California Peninsula up to California's central coast, is facing a sharp population decline that could spell its irreversible doom. According to a new survey conducted by the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, the iconic North American butterfly, which migrates thousands of miles across the continent, is now hovering inches away from extinction. So in 1980, the monarch butterfly population reached about 4.5 million. By the mid-2000s, this was down to just under 100,000. And last year, according to these estimates, the number of western monarchs fell to a staggering 28,000, which is a 99.4% decline since the last couple decades. This is pretty insane. And biologist Emma Pelton says it's mind-boggling. We're now down below 1% of the historic population. She says it's very apt to say that this is a canary in a coal mine for a lot of our native pollinators. There's a tight link and a loss of insects and our songbirds, which rely on insects. We have declines in songbirds, and I think that links directly to declines in insects. So, facing some real world problems here. Whether we talk about climate change or we talk about man-made geoengineering or we talk about cycles the earth is going through, there is a change afoot, and Mother Nature is evolving. Whether or not the human species evolves and can survive remains to be seen, but this is the impact of our actions. These kinds of things, the actions we take every day, do matter, and they do affect the world around us. So just remember that. And number 7, an American anchor for Iran's Press TV still jailed without charge. And I did mention this on my live show last week, but just another one. This is the 7th story that you might not have heard about in the last week or couple weeks. U.S. grand jury reportedly investigating Press TV for propaganda. So this is an American citizen born in New Orleans, African-American woman born in New Orleans and converted to Islam and then moved to Iran. And she was a Press TV journalist and working for them over there. And she came to the United States apparently to visit a family member, and then was held without access to a lawyer, without being charged or anything like that. Sounds like the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, which was signed into law in 2011 by Obama, and now continued to be supported by Trump and every other administration. Obama continually re-signed it and reissued the NDAA and its indefinite detention clauses, and the Trump administration has also approved of it. In fact, this is the second time under the Trump administration that an American citizen has been held without access to a trial or a lawyer or anything. And this is the first citizen. I reported on that guy for months, and he was eventually released, but he was released under the condition that he be shipped out of the United States. Even though he was born in the United States, he was not allowed to stay here because they accused him of terrorism, even though they never charged him and apparently didn't have enough evidence to actually hold him accountable. They just held him for a while without access to a lawyer until enough people made enough noise that they let him go and shipped him out of here. And we don't know what's going to happen with her. She was being held, and her family described some pretty disturbing things happening to her, her being chained, them trying to feed her pork, or just, harassing her and treating her like shit. So this is going on here in America right now. An American citizen, American journalist working for a foreign press outlet that the United States is currently trying to push for war with is now being held indefinitely without charge. This is America. And the final note I want to make is that it's important to remember that the whole controversy that I'm talking about here, this MAGA kids with the MAGA hats versus the Indigenous man that was there on Indigenous Peoples Day for the Indigenous Peoples March in D.C., has just been taken and bastardized and used as a way to divide people. And this should be common sense by now. This is why whenever there's some trending topic, I usually wait days, weeks, months, or maybe never even mention it at all in my videos, because I don't want to just be another talking head out there just talking about the same thing that the mainstream's talking about, but giving you, here's my alternative perspective, right? It's like, I think we've heard about it enough. So the only things I'm going to briefly say about this is, besides the fact that we all know that the media took the situation and blew it out of proportion and changed it and only played selective clips, and each side used that to attack the other. The left wing says, oh, look at this racist MAGA kids, and then the right wing says, oh, look at the fake news media and that violent Indigenous man, and nobody's even talking about why the people were there. It was an Indigenous Peoples March, which, as this article from Waging Nonviolence states, was about a lot more than these kids. It had nothing to do with these kids. There are reasons that people came there. And according to one of the activists, Jay Winter Nightwolf, who is a Canadian man out there expressing his feelings about the Indigenous community, says that Donald Trump has declared war on the American Indian. he said in a speech overlooking the national monument. So there's real things going on. There are real people out there fighting for their causes, fighting for the fact that Indigenous women go missing, more than any other, women in any population, any demographic. Thousands of Indigenous women across the United States and Canada have gone missing. Kids have gone missing. There's drug problems on Indigenous communities. There's pipelines being built and eminent domain stealing more land from Native people and treaties being violated. There's all kinds of reason that the Indigenous people were there that day. And then even to the other side, the kids were there from this Catholic church, and they were there for the March for the Life. And whether or not you agree with that cause, that's a anti-abortion, pro-life march, and that's a cause that is very near and dear to them. And I think that's probably near and dear to some of you guys, wherever you stand on that issue. But my point is, those people were not there to cause conflict with each other. And if you've seen the interviews with both the kid and the Indigenous man, then you know that they have kind of both expressed their points of view, and they seem like they actually want to talk and get together and see where there's a misunderstanding. The only bigots in the room seem to be the Black Israelites, the Black Hebrew community there that was sitting there calling the kids names and calling the natives names and just causing problems, right? The other two just, I don't know. I think it's irrelevant, right, at the end of the day, right? Because why were they there? One group was there because they thought it was important to talk about saving babies and not supporting abortion. The other group was there to talk about the Indigenous communities and the struggles that those communities go through and what life's like on reservations and the struggle to survive in the United States after 500 plus years of colonization and of just violence. Let's not forget those things. Let's not allow the mainstream to divide us and have us distracted from the real news. We've just covered 7 different things that are going on in your world around you that are more important than fighting over which side was right and why was the kid smirking or why did the man walk this direction, right? There are real issues going on, and it's time for us to focus on those. Stop allowing yourself to be controlled by the corporate media and allowing your mind to be dictated by the tweets of people in power, right? Let's take our minds back, take our hearts back, reclaim that headspace. Like the great John Trudell said, that space in between your skull is the most important real estate out there. Everybody is trying to get in that headspace. Take that headspace back, gain control of your own mind, and from there proceed forward in a good way using critical thinking and compassion and not allowing yourself to be manipulated. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thanks for paying attention. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please share it out, like, follow, subscribe, all those good things. If you want to support us, go to patreon.com/DerekBros. Oh, FYI, the Finders documentary is coming out either tonight or in the morning. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Till next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.